Go by Sarah Chastain. Narrated by Sarah Chastain. Don't lock the stable door after the horse has been stolen. Chapter 1. Typical chestnut mare. Long ago, there was no reason to have horses for pleasure. They were for work, and that was what they knew, and that was what they did. Except sometimes they were for racing, and under unusual circumstances, they were used for both. Here is where I found flaw in most horses. Those that were used for pleasure weren't normally a terrible pleasure to associate with, and those that were used for work weren't typically a safe bet. But all that changed, it seemed, when 3 horses were braided together for all history to appreciate. Right now there is a ghost of a horse following me, the first one I met actually on my journey to wherever it was I was headed. Please be reckoned, all ye who enter here. In this story dead men do tell tales, and so do their steeds. The year on the clock was November of 1721, and our ship had been so overtaken by those in charge of capturing us that we had to go to our horses to get away. This is the story of how Scarborough was caught with her crew of pirates, including Anne Bonny and Calico Jack, and how she still managed to get away. It didn't go down like the history book said. No, it didn't go like that at all. In fact, the way it went is such a story that perhaps no one will understand the way it really went. But either way, it makes a good reading, so please, I leave off, and we are in the middle of a chase here, and my horse isn't fresh, nor is it tired yet, but there are a few things to come that can't be undone, because history is about to be made, and that is the way it really should go. Our horses drove off through the muddy waters, scrambling for footing on the banks of Spanish Town, Jamaica, as we spurred them onward from our attackers. They chugged the water slowly, waiting to feel the slippery sand beneath them, I holding mane, not giving direction yet, because I didn't want to stir up my animal into a frenzy, hoping to preserve energy and keeping my horse's mind in tune with my own. I remained in the thrill of the fox hunt, where I had so suddenly become the fox, and the huntsman was now after me. His red coat no longer distinguished him among the others, and I needed to hide quickly, for my own hide was at stake. Trudging along, they found purchase along the banks, and we swung back toward the main road, the only one sufficient to accommodate all our horses, and the swiftness of the chase took hold. No longer was the noose around our necks, but the mere lasso being invented in the minds of the Wild West cowboys, because none of these men had ever met such a horseman as myself and my mare, until I saw him coming at me. There between them was such a horse so swift that I could not shake him, no matter how hard I tried, no matter how much I asked of my horse, no matter what the maneuver I gave of my mare. Behind myself and my horse, all I could hear was "ba-black, ba-black," as its galloping hoofs drove on. And as I looked back, all I could do was see the colors and hear the sound as they blended together, creating this image of a ghost horse. He blended with the light and his master, creating such an image of invisibility that I could not tell where his representation ended, except for the fiery glow within his eyes. They were the only burning embers that let you know he is still brilliantly followed. I lowered myself, holding back, hoping to give some detour to the pack, giving my mare every cue to play lame. Lameness was a sign of limping, and that my horse was pulling up from the rally, but it was a mere ploy I had used many times to get the leaders to take account on me and let the others go. My horse feigned injury over and over again, only to be overtaken and then regain control of the chase, being that she was by and far the fastest one among the herd of horses that we had come to commit to. Now I finally made my bid and veered to the left, leaving the group behind and gaining ground as the path diverged between me and my friends. Instead of pulling off just the leader as I was supposed to, I pulled off the whole gang of patrolmen, and the leader went on to continue following my pack of recruitments instead. Instead of 1-on-1 as I had planned, it turned out to be 1-on-6 and 6-on-1, not the arranged fashion I wanted at all. Kicking my mare into high gear, I realized that I was now the major priority to these men, and the fox was not about to escape their hounding, no matter what the circumstances, unless I thought quickly, which I did. Reaching for my cutlass, I grabbed its hilt and brandished it, but not too wildly as to not alert my mare, for I did not want to spook her. She shied anyways, and I missed my mark, trying to take out the lights, for I knew she would, which was why I had tried to take it easy. As fast as she was a bit of a panicked animal, and that is why I was one of the only people who could ride her. She only really reasoned well with me, and most had given up on her long ago. I cursed the day I bought her in the 30-second gap that I missed my lantern, and I remembered the entire moment of 5 hours and 5 seconds. It had been a spring day, and there had been no others around. She was obviously fast, but no one had any dealings with her in about a century. Why? Because she had broken the legs of 2 stallions in a bull in the time it took her to take action, or maybe it was the girl looking at her. Either way, they were in the market for each other. Neither her owner wanted her nor her stock, because that's what you'll get from the lot of them. Crazy. But the girl knew she was just misunderstood, poorly broken, beaten into service, and never asked if she wanted to be ridden by someone for the rest of her life, and told where to go and when all for gourmet food and accommodations at the hand of some master who will determine what is right and wrong. So the girl got herself the reasoning in her mind to lunge the beauty on 4 legs and realize she could move, and boy could she ever. Movement wasn't what it was to the mare, but lightning as she streaked across in a bolt of pent-up energy that had longed to be released by a fiery solstice of burning furnace. Typical chestnut mare, thought Scarborough as she examined the horse's gaits, 3 easy liquid measures burning themselves into her gaze. In the stockyard, Scarborough had examined her legs and had found no complications that would prove her unsound, but if her mind wasn't sound, then there was no point in venturing forward with any transaction. The mare lowered her head and dipped her head as if in tune to Scarborough's thoughts, and then slowed to a trot. Quieting herself, she tongued at the corners of her mouth, almost yawning, then relaxing her jaw in a gentle chomping motion. Well, thought Scarborough, licking and chewing means digesting a thought. I'll take that as a sign, and Scarborough signed the papers, making her the official owner of a less-than-perfect, typical chestnut mare, which was very quick but not very quiet, and was now being put to the test once again in the chase of her life against the ghost horse and his crew. Typical chestnut mare, thought Scarborough as she snapped out of the transfixation of remembering the day she bought firewater from the stockyards. Scarborough's cutlass struck the top row of lanterns hanging above them, causing the calamity of all the lights to come crashing down for the next mile, but her horse shied from allowing her to snatch one before it fell, only to end up scorching herself instead on the burning flame that lasted just long enough to illuminate the curse words that were emitted from her mouth. Silence came after the lights went out, and at least the silence of hoofbeats, and all she could see was nothing to that's when she pulled her second moved. In the complete darkness, I slowed and pulled my horse up until I stopped. I heard the rest ride by, and I didn't have much of a clue to what to do, so I decided my horse had better night vision than I, and that I should trust it to tell me where to go rather than try and steer it myself. So I allowed my horse to do all the direction-taking and walked on. The party in front had come to a halt somewhere in the distance, and I could hear them yelling, looking for me. "Which way did she go?" asked one. "I don't know," said another. "Don't worry, we'll get her," replied a third. Slowly but surely I realized the voices were approaching me, but I couldn't see well enough to tell how far or how close, so I simply had to keep riding. My horse's hooves were then joined by the friendly clip-clop of more horses' hooves, and I realized that I had ridden in among the whole gang of them, but with the lights out there was no way they could tell that I had joined them, so I was still safe, at least for the matter of time. The fox was now among the hounds, and I had to escape before they caught my scent, and how true this would be. Now riding among the group, I could barely gauge where I was, so I made a bid for it, the front, and then I saw it, the gloom. I got scared. There in the distance was the presence of lights coming back on, where everyone would be able to see me again, and I would strike no chance at getting away. So I did the best I could, and what anyone would, and stopped. And would you know what that nag, Firewater, did was? She brought someone with her. Yes, as if she could do no more to embarrass me that night than to shy and spook when I needed a lantern and get me into this mess in the first place, but now someone's stallion was enraptured with her. Typical chestnut mare, I thought to myself. The man did his best to kick his horse on, but there was no going. Apparently under the moonlight they had made a pact, and there was no breaking it. There was love in the air that night, I grumbled, in my best male voice, which was well practiced. We could let 'em go over to the other side there, you know. "Funny," replied the man. "I don't remember anyone riding any mares from my lot tonight, so that must mean—" I turned and hightailed it before he could get any more words out, but it was too late. That ghost of a horse was after me again. My mare's hooves scrambled for footing as the ground between us was overtaken by that stallion. Firewater, as bad as she wanted it, did not want my cutlass in her ass, and replied with the giddy-up and go of a "get ye the holy hell on," that a pointed weapon in her butt would only mean. That gave us a moment of reprieve from the hellish demon thing that followed us down every road, but as soon as he was after us, and his horse barely taking a whisper of a breath. It was all too little too late. His horse had caught the scent of mine, and there was something beastly about the entire situation. His stallion wanted my mare with an entirety of his being that no man or woman can understand. Overtaking her was just the game he played to get to the game itself. When he finally overpowered us and came up on us, neck and neck we were, and he grabbed at our reins with that fine head and sinewy neck that arched like a quality stonemason's craftsmanship. I looked at that fire in his eyes and realized that he knew he had won, but I didn't know how. He knew it was over, but why? I grabbed the reins and clutched them to my palms, and with his mouth frothed with foam, he chewing his bit, and I said to my mare the last thing I knew to say, "Go!" And with that last words, he pushed it into high gear, and something in him recognized. I realized at that minute my mistake. I had just uttered something really bad, and I was going to pay for it. I spurred onward, but again it was all for naught. Within an hour the sun was rising, and I could no longer hide in the shadows of the moonlight, nor from my pursuer. My mare's scent was on the breeze of the cool night air, and that stallion could smell her a mile away, it seemed. Now that the hound had my smell, it seemed there would be no hope in ever deterring him from his undying pursuit of my blood. Her blood was what he wanted, though, and there was no letting go of her at this point. Even she had very little idea as to who to comply with. Me, her beloved master and owner, the first person who had ever taken the time to build trust with her and make a bond with her as to no longer abuse her servitude, or the sexual ball of steaming energy that now hellishly chased us like a phantom. I knew I should have bred her this season. It had been something I had meant to do, if only to settle the last of her nerves, but there was no business of packing a foal along on a pirate ship, and I couldn't bear to part with her for a season, so I had forgone my decision to get her in full, which had served me well in all my other endeavors, as this is the closest we had come to being caught ever. Then the light began to creep in. At first it came slowly, like a thief in the night, fingering everything for what it could touch it could perhaps keep, and then own. It started with a pale outline of my horse's flaxen mane, which began to grow gold with the morning sunshine. The white sweat began frothing and showing wherever the saddle or tack touched her body, and her golden mane and tail streaked out behind her due to the sheer last-minute speed she delivered me. Even stiller did the hoofbeats drone on, "Ba-black, ba-black," behind me, and the fiery eyes of the spectre-like horse burned onward with a savage pleasure. Soon, too, the phantasm began to take shape, and his outline burned such an image of perfection that I will never forget him, even to this day. His head, as I had mentioned, was chiseled perfection, with the tiny teacup nose and a massive jaw, with a large, wide, soft eye that indicated intelligence, yet kindness to his master, but perhaps only his master. His large, wide forehead carried no markings. His thick forelock was brown-black, blown back by the oncoming wind, blowing as he ran onward. His large, muscular chest was all I could grapple at, but how it powered out his strides was beyond my imagination, taking each one with ever easier a gliding step than before. His massive, thick frame was offset by four thin but sturdy and very straight legs that all moved in a fluid machine-like motion that simulate a perfect harmony of gearworks. The only daintiness bestowed upon the midnight horse fit for royalty was a tiny white sock on his hind leg, reminding all that even the darkest of creatures has a touch of light. The oil-black bay showed signs of obvious care. He was young, too, and undefeated, you could tell. His spirit had never been broken, and it wasn't about to be now. It was unfathomable. I was taken in 15 minutes after the first light, where I cried to the laboring lungs of my horse that they please pity her and take her to a good home and give her fresh hay and good water, hoping in the back of my mind to one day regain her. And perhaps, I screamed at the last minute, you could always breed her to that nice stallion she's so in love with. Fucking typical chestnut mare. I spit on the ground hard as I walked off in chains, and I was officially under arrest. When I got to the cell where Anne Bonny and Calico Jack were, I found out the news that Anne had already pleaded her belly to the court, stating that she was with child and could she please be looked upon as an innocent soon-to-be mother, and nothing less and nothing more. I decided to use the same tactics, only to convince them of the same ploy. But how was I supposed to escape the ruse of the fact that I was not actually pregnant and never going to actually deliver a baby? That's when I decided I was going to have to die, or at the very least get very ill and almost die.